our naturopathic doctor. Do you want to go first?
Hi, can you guys hear me okay? Hi, my name is Dr. Jody Larry. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I've been in practice in the city of Toronto for about 16 years. And I'm really, really passionate about teaching people how to utilize food and lifestyle habits and, even how they think to really enhance their health. So I'm really excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Does Holly want to go next? Oh, I think you have to unmute yourself now.
Okay, so that happens all the time with me. It's been a transition, actually teaching yoga online over the last year and a half. I've been teaching for over a decade now, but practicing yoga really for a few decades. And my mission really is to just share techniques and experiences to help others find their way. I think that we are born with uninhibited, with a lot of light and with a lot of energy. And I think that it gets covered up over the years, sometimes by experience or where you live, environments. And I'm just here to sort of facilitate and help people find their way back home.
Awesome. And then does Miss Mary, is it Mangos?
It's Mangos, yes, pretty good. Hi, everybody. I'm actually dialing in today from Melbourne in Australia. So it's actually morning here, late morning, 11 a.m. or 11:08 now, to be specific. I'm a psychologist. I've got my own business called Coach You Wellness, and my sort of work is really around coaching and online learning, really just to support, just the everyday person to find more peace and clarity. And I think more than ever now, with the constant uncertainty that we're all experiencing, it's become, I think, a more important priority. So at the end of the day, it's all about prioritizing yourself, your well-being, not feeling guilty about that, and putting in some practical strategies and practices that are sustainable and that make a difference for you.
Awesome. And then we have Aiden.
Yeah, I'm Aiden Smith. I play on the basketball team here at the University of Calgary. I'm actually from Calgary, so if anyone else is from Calgary, I went to Western Canada High School. I've been playing basketball for a long time now. I couldn't even tell you how many years, but yeah, I'm like the kind of the athlete's perspective for the panel. So I know a lot of you guys play sports, hopefully, and if you got any questions like that, I'm here to answer them.
Awesome. So if anybody has any questions, please take this time to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. If not, or while we have that happening, I will start with some of the questions that were sent in. So for Holly and Mary, what can one do in terms of practices to be more present in situations?
I'm not sure who should go first. It looks like I'm off mute. Okay. What can one do? One can actually start before the storm comes in. So quite often when we're on the edge, when we're feeling really stressed out, we start to grab for straws. And in my experience, it's been practicing before the storm comes in. So there's many different techniques. One technique is to sit and to practice a form of meditation. It can be very simple form of meditation. There's various ways of doing it. The second way is to move the body and connect the body with the mind. So often we are outside of our minds. Our bodies are moving along almost as if we're on autopilot. And if we're not plugging in to ourselves and clearing it's very difficult to navigate your way through difficult situations. So to start, I would say a good healthy meditation as well as an asana practice is a great way to achieve that.
If I can add my comments too, I agree with Holly, and I'm certainly, as a psychologist, I meditate every day, and I have to say I probably sometimes meditate a couple of times a day. In terms of formal practice, I find that's important for me to be able to have that clarity, be in the moment more. But also, I know that it's important to offer other options. And what are some other ways that you can, be more mindful and be more in the moment? And so, some of those other things are to think about becoming mindful with your everyday practices. And one of my favorites, when the weather's pretty miserable out here today, but one of my favorites is going for a walk. And if you walk past a beautiful garden, or if you're lucky enough to walk into a park, just, even pausing and stopping, notice the trees, notice the bark on the tree, the color, just notice the temperature. So just to take lots of those regular pauses and trying to find opportunities in your day to do that, to connect with things particularly like that that are very soothing and grounding, can be really helpful. But also just even lovely things like I'm having a tea at the moment, or if you love your coffee, just even take a few seconds while you're drinking that to pause and just connect with, what does it taste like? Even just holding the cup, just feeling the heat. So there's lots of ways to get grounded in that moment. But no, too, in terms of the autopilot that Holly mentioned, that is just, it's normal for us to go into autopilot, but we know that we can train and grow our mindfulness muscle just like we can train the muscles in our body. So it's possible. Just finding the activities that resonate for you, that you enjoy, and practicing consistently, you should see a difference.
Thank you for that, Mary. Question for you, Aiden, as a follow-up. How has meditation visualization changed how you play ball? If it has.
Yeah, actually, visualization is actually a huge part. I remember the first time we were introduced for it, I was maybe 15 years old. And we were at one of the provincial tryouts, and they brought us in. So we had a tryout. It was over 2 days. And the next day before, they brought us into a room. They turned off all the lights. We sat down on mats, and they just wanted us to envision us doing stuff, envision us playing in a game, envision us in a practice. And at least I found is when you get to the same situations, that if you take time to really think about it and almost kind of like plan what you're going to do, then when you get to that situation, it becomes that much easier. I know, I'm forgetting I think it's Julio Jones. He talks about all the time about like visualizing catching the football when he's playing like in big NFL games. And so I've kind of tried to use that like almost before I go to sleep, like, oh, tomorrow if this is going to come up, here's what I'll do, and just kind of thinking in advance and kind of visualizing how that all kind of goes.
Awesome, that was great. Okay, next question is for Holly as well. So what are some stretches one should do for better health long term, and how often should they do them? Oh.
I've done a little bit of traveling today. It's a really good question, actually. There's many stretches to go to, but one of my favorite stretches is actually legs up the wall. So I bring my butt up against, I sit down on the floor, I bring my butt up against the wall, and I swivel my legs up the wall. It helps lengthen out the lordotic space, giving a nice long stretch to a space that sometimes carries a lot of unnecessary tension, especially as a result of maybe slouchy or kind of weak posture. It also allows just the blood to flow from the feet down towards the heart. And, in that position, really there's a sense of calming, and even a sense of shifting from sympathetic nervous system, go, to the parasympathetic. That is one of my favorite go-tos. I do enjoy many asanas, many different postures, but I would say that that is one that is particularly one of my favorites, especially when I'm traveling.
Awesome. Okay, next question is for Miss Jody. So are there any vitamins you recommend students could take that might help prevent that, well, in dorm room living, there can be sickness that travels really easily, or it's a very social aspect of your youth. So any vitamins you recommend for young adults and students?
Good political way to ask the question. So the best things for immunity, really in general, all the time, is definitely vitamin D. I would say vitamin D is the baseline most important thing. It's not as important right now because we're getting a lot of sun. So if you're someone who goes outside and you do take in sun, you wouldn't need it right now. But then there are also people who don't take in sun, like they're always wearing hats, lots and lots of sunscreen, always in the shade. Those types of people would need vitamin D right now. And then sort of, unfortunately, we're not in Australia. So for us, from like November to basically April, it's very cold and gray. And in those months, you would definitely need to take vitamin D. And I would say every student should take at least 1,000 international units a day all throughout that time period, a little bit more if you feel something coming on. That's number one. Number two, vitamin C as well. An amazing preventative. I liked how Holly said too, like preventative. So many people wait to take action for themselves. And the people that are going to get ahead the fastest and are going to stay the healthiest are the ones that are doing it preventatively. So I would take these things preventatively and then up the dose, if you feel like you're catching something. So again, vitamin D, vitamin C. I really, really love things like oil of oregano. They're very, very hard to take. Has anyone here ever tried oil of oregano? You can raise your hand. It's really quite harsh, but it's pretty remarkable and it does work very quickly. So a couple drops and a little bit of water right when you feel that throat tickle or you're feeling run down or someone in your dorm has, some kind of illness, then I would start taking oil of oregano right away, a couple drops. It can sometimes ward off the illness and or decrease the intensity and duration. So those three things I would sort of always have in my combat. And then some other dietary tips. So viruses of any kind, when they're in your system, you want to make sure that you don't eat any nuts or dairy. The reason for nuts is that nuts have a protein in them called arginine, which actually help viruses replicate. So as soon as I'm sick or one of my kids are sick, like no almonds, no nuts, and no dairy, because dairy is just, it's hard on your immune system and it's hard to get over things. So this is not all the time. This is sort of when you have something. And keeping your diet and nutrition really strong is also a really good preventative measure.
I have another follow-up. Sorry, guys. If not anyone, it'll be me that asks the follow-up. How does, I guess, both for our psychologist and our mindfulness instructor and our athlete, food affect our mental state? And then also, what foods would you, as an athlete, be eating and prioritizing before games, after games? So feel free to prioritize the questions however, or answer them however.
I'll jump with what we eat normally for games. It depends on the schedule. Depends on how quickly we're going from one thing to another. If we have a practice on, like, let's say a Thursday and we don't play till Saturday, then what we eat, we can eat a little heavier foods. Our body's got tons of time to kind of digest that and all that between all that time. But a lot of times what happens is we'll be away on away trips. We'll play a game Friday and then we'll play a game Saturday. So there's not a whole lot of time in between playing two games. So we're going like crazy on Friday, and then the next day we're playing again on Saturday. So there's not a whole lot of time that we have to really eat super heavy food. So it's kind of light carbs, I'm always personally, I always like eat fruit, and I always have like an apple and a banana before I play basketball game. It's just like it's a habit thing I've been doing forever. I don't know if the nutritionist is a crazy big fan of it, but most of the time it depends on how how our schedule is looking for what we're eating before games and stuff.
If I just add a couple of things as well. So we are seeing more and more research now that sort of validating really what we suspect anyway, that food obviously influences our mood as well, and our well-being in general. Of course it does. From a psychology perspective too, lots happening out here at Deakin University in particular, something in that research space. And I was lucky enough to interview a nutritionist, Melbourne-based nutritionist recently on my podcast, and she talked about mood foods too. Though we do know from research, so things like salmon, for instance. So thinking about the foods in your diet can make a difference, and more and more we'll see psychologists taking that sort of more holistic approach and encouraging people to really look at their whole life, not just here are some great strategies that'll make you feel great, but also and the energy that you're gaining from the foods that you eat is part of that too. So the part of that equation as well. So it's a really great question, and because it does make a difference, definitely.
Yeah, it really does make a mood. I would add, for myself, actually, I would say about 2 years ago, I went on pretty much a plant-based, I would just say plant-based diet. Anything that is grown from the sun feels good in my tummy. And I think that for me, it is a way of processing faster. So there isn't something like hanging out in my digestive tract, in my ascending or descending colon for too long. And it gives me the right amount of energy. So plant-based, and I hate to label, and so I don't. I just say plant-based. I don't want to say I'm a vegetarian or I'm a vegan or because I'm really just a human that likes to eat plant-based food, and I feel better. I don't feel sluggish. I don't feel tired. I don't have a problem with moving it through my system. It's worked, and I think that all you need to do is try it. But I do really believe that if you label yourself, you're gonna go down the wrong avenue, and that you should just experiment and not hold yourself to any expectations. And other people won't either, especially when you don't label yourself. So just try it. Just try eating a plant-based diet for a while and see what it feels like.
Yeah, so a follow-up question we have for that is for Dr. Larry. What you think plant-based versus meat-based diet, and if there are basically the pros and cons of both.
Okay, so one thing just to add to the food and mood thing. So I've been working with people around changing their diets and seeing the impact on their mood for a very, very long time. It's very, very real. And the biggest culprit personally that I've seen in the last 16 years is sugar. Refined sugar has a really detrimental impact on people's moods. And when people take it out, because I run a program where I take people on a 10-day journey, and they take out refined sugar and gluten and dairy and caffeine and alcohol, and they really focus on eating, nourishing foods. It's not plant-based. It's just taking the crap out and eating clean, nourishing foods. And yes, digestion improves and all that, but one of the biggest improvements I see always is around mental, emotional health, increased stress resilience, less mood swings, better sleep, more stable moods, less anxiety. It's very, very, very connected. So sugar, coffee, those things are really going to impact your mood, and you really want to look at those things if you're wanting to use food to improve your mood. Around plant-based versus meat-based, my answer is that it's very, very, very individual. And I don't think that you can really say like, this is good for everybody and this is good for everybody. I know holistic nutritionists who were vegan for 25 years and then realized it's actually not healthy for me. Like my body isn't functioning, and they had to add meat, and they had to kind of see it as a supplement for them to be okay with it, but they had to for their bodies. So like Holly was saying, you know, don't put yourself in a box, try different things and be mindful of how these things impact you. What is going to have the most impact on your health, though, is eating food that nourishes, food that comes from the earth, food that is not processed, food that gives your body something when you eat it. And that's really what's most important. Sorry if that didn't fully answer, but it's the only way I can, because it's just so individual.
No, that was great. Thank you. Question for Aiden, kind of in the same realm of taking care of your body. When you work out, is stretching before and after like an absolute must?
Hands down, without a question, it's a must. Our strength and conditioning coach, Rich, I always mess up his last name, Hensesh, something like that. He was the strength and conditioning coach for the Flames for 30 years, 35 years, something like that. And he's always with us. And before we do anything at all, we always spend at least 20-25 minutes stretching before. And then at the end of every single basketball game, we do a full cool down stretch that takes maybe 20 minutes. Like we never do anything without fully getting in like the right like physical space for doing anything.
May I ask, I feel like a lot of people after they work out, they just kind of don't want to spend time stretching, you know, like that's like the last of it. They're done their workout, they want to leave. Can you speak to how it's changed your just your like athletic skills, if any, or if at all?
I mean, for me, we never like we work out 6 times a week. So if you finish your workout and then you just stop, your body's just going to do the same thing. Your body's just going to shut down. And then it's going to be even harder. You're going to get sore over the next little bit. It's going to be harder for the next time when you're trying to do work. It's going to be that much harder to get back to that space. It's always kind of like you start up, get to a good point, and then you calm down. But you're still in a space where you could still move the next day and you could still do different things. And for us, when we're going to do that every single day, you always got to be ready to keep on moving the next day, which is where kind of that stretching at the end kind of comes into.
Holly, do you think you could add to that? And I know yoga and stretching go hand in hand. Can you add to the concept of that in yoga?
Yeah, so in a lot of classes offer a flow-through class. You'll hear a lot of vinyasa flow-through. So you start off with perhaps a little bit of grounding, a little bit of meditation, a little breath, and you slowly build up, and then you start challenging yourself in balancing poses. And towards the end of the practice, more asanas done on the floor. Again, moving, speak to this sympathetic and parasympathetic. I hope I'm not overusing it, but it is true. So when we're amped up, we're feeding a lot of energy through our body. And when we start to slow down, we're sending the brain a message that it's time now to release that energy that's been building up in our muscles. And it's a very intimate, I would say, a very intimate experience when you have enough time to do the last part of the class in movements that are slow and that stretch those big muscles or even smaller muscles, and allow the sympathetic nervous system to slow and the parasympathetic to come on. So it's important. Sometimes you'll just go to a power class and there'll be a very small amount of time dedicated for that warm down, and it might not feel as rounded. It might not feel as rounded.
Yeah, and to add to that, and our next question was also for Holly, and is, are you building muscle by doing yoga?
I would say that you're building muscle really by doing anything that's going to challenge the muscle by using weight. And if it's longer holds and repetitive action, muscle will build. It would not be, I just lost. We just lost everybody, Mike. Oh, hello?
Yeah, you're here. I spotlighted everyone and I seem to have.
Oh, okay, as long as you can hear me. Can everyone still hear me? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So I think you're building muscle and doing everything. Obviously, if you build muscle by lifting weight, you're going to see a much different result. But I know that my experience over the last few decades has been that I've maintained muscle and toned muscle, and it works quite well for me. So yes, in my experience is that yes, you can build muscle depending on the type of yoga you are practicing.
Thank you for that. Our next question is for Miss Mary, and it's what you recommend for students when they're feeling overwhelmed or depressed.
Wow, well, that's a big question. Thank you. I think there would be very much an individualized answer depending on the person and where they're at, and what they're showing up when they're saying that they're depressed. And I think that's important just to put that aside for a moment, because you would need to sort of dive in and explore that to really support that person through. But certainly, if I focus on the overwhelmed, again, taking a bit of a holistic approach to that, looking at your lifestyle practices first. It might seem strange that as a psychologist, I might be talking about lifestyle before mindset, but probably the number one thing that I'll always want to find out is, how well are you sleeping right now? Because you can have great mindset strategies, but if you don't sleep well, then it's really hard to get the executive functions of your brain to really, do its job and have clarity and have focus. That's quite normal. So that's sort of when our stress response is activated like that, looking at that holistic picture. So are you sleeping well, and what can you do to maybe enhance that? Slowly work on that and make some changes that improve your sleep quality. But also, what do you do during the day that helps that and helps your energy in general and your overwhelm? And if you've been busy studying, do you take regular breaks? Are there times where you renew your energy as well? So just thinking about it from an energy perspective first, and then in the midst of feeling, overwhelmed, obviously if you already have some go-to practices and a mindfulness or meditation app that you can use if you find that helpful. Some people do, and I know some people don't, but then definitely go to that. One of my favorite techniques that I teach my clients is the 4-7-8 breathing technique, particularly in the middle of overwhelm.
Yep.
So if people are familiar with that one, and yeah, and if I just explain what that is, so 4-7-8 refers to you're counting in, you're breathing in, you're counting into a count of 4 as you breathe in. So you're going 2, 3, 4. You would hold your breath to a count of 7, and then you would slowly breathe out to a count of 8. And you would do a couple of rounds of that, and you'd go to the pace that works for you. So you don't have to, you don't feel that you need to do that really slowly if you're in that, feeling quite stressed. Just go at the pace that you feel comfortable. Speed it up if you have to, and you can do that as often as you like throughout the day, and you'll find that hopefully your stress response reduces, that feeling of overwhelm reduces, and that's a really great one to do really anywhere. That you don't have to close your eyes to do that. You can do that even around other people, so no one necessarily would know that you're doing that. So that would be my key tip in the midst of overwhelm.
Can I just add something to that? I think it's so ironic because I've been practicing different types of breathing techniques for a number of years, and breathing techniques, pranayama, has never really been my favorite. And I just discovered the 478 about 6 weeks ago. And I started practicing it. And I can tell you it worked very well for me. And on my way to the space that I'm in right now, I've been traveling a little bit, and I was in a car with someone, and I needed to rest, but I wasn't driving, but I needed to rest, but I needed to pay attention. And so I was practicing that 478. And I said to my partner, isn't it interesting that I can, now that I've been practicing for a while, I have no problem at all doing it. And in fact, it was very, very easy today. And it was just what I needed to give me enough energy so I could come on this call. So it's remarkable that you just brought up the 478 technique, because I would definitely say that that's a go-to, and you can practice it anywhere.
And if I could just add something to that, thank you, Holly, for really just sharing your experience on it as well. If I can just add too that the technique, it's great when you're feeling overwhelmed, obviously, but it's, as Holly said, it's good anytime when you want to get some clarity or focus. Sometimes for my, say, corporate clients that I work with, they sometimes use it even between meetings or just before a meeting to sort of just, get grounded again. And when that question that was asked earlier, how can I perhaps be in the moment more or be more mindful? 478 is one way to do that. So remember, the 4 is breathing, your count breathing in, hold for 7, breathe out for 8. And if you'd like us to demonstrate it, we can do that too. Let me know if you think that would be helpful. So should I, Marina? Should I demo? What do you think?
Sure, I'd say go for it.
Okay, because it's easy to talk about it, but it's nice to feel it firsthand, right? Like anything else. So, okay, so how I like, or how I encourage my clients to prep for it is let's just start by breathing in and slowly breathing out. And now breathing in, count 1, 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So just take another breath in again, slowly breathing out. And let's go again, breathing in, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and breathe out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm just going to stop there. Just love to, pop your comments into chat. Just let me know how that was. So I would say do 3 rounds, take a break, and then you can do that again. If you start to feel lightheaded, just know that will pass too pretty quickly. And like anything, just try it and see if it's helpful for you. Remember, you don't have to feel overwhelmed to use it. Great to use before exams, before doing some work, just to get grounded, get focused. Very good. Very refreshing. And no one can tell exactly. Perfect. Oh, I'm glad. Thank you. Thanks for sharing your feedback too.
Awesome. I think, okay, someone just said it in the chat. It's for Dr. Jody. What is a good step for someone just getting into natural medicine?
A good step for someone who would just be getting into natural medicine would be to start to utilize the easiest things first, I would say. So things like movement. Movement is really, really important. And I think I would start there. Then once you've sort of embodied that, I would look at the food piece like I was talking about before, because it really is so unbelievably pertinent. I would say like 50% of nature's medicine outside of, herbal medicine and supplements is really in food. And I've always been a practitioner that suggests food as a supplement over taking, lots and lots of different things if that's applicable. So I think starting to educate yourself around how to use food to really enhance your health would be an incredible, incredible step. I really like to follow people like Dr. Mark Hyman. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him, but he's amazing. I can throw his name in the chat. And I'm also on Instagram. You can follow me if you're into it, what I'm saying. And there's lots of education that I give as well. So I think that the internet, as much as it's, you know, all over the place with things, if you find some good trusted people, you can also gain some good information, basic information that can really get you started. And I'll put those names in the chat.
Awesome, thank you. Our next question is for all of our panelists. It is, what do you think is the best thing students can do to take care of themselves? And what do you think, to further that, they can do during periods of high stress like midterms or finals?
Okay, well, I'll go first. I was waiting politely to see who wanted to step in first. Okay, that's a big question too. So, what would be my go-to? I think, as I said earlier, making sure you're sleeping well. I think that's pretty important. Having those core fundamental things that are so important for our well-being, that that we're exercising, we're sleeping well, we're eating well, I think is really, really important. But probably my number one go-to, and that I personally do a lot of now in the midst of coming out of this our last lockdown, which was quite stressful here in Melbourne, is to have regular breaks. And so I've got reminders that pop up for me just in case I do get distracted. Sometimes I set timers to remind me. If you've got that period of overwhelm, or a stressful period coming up potentially, or a busy period coming up, take care of yourself with regular breaks. And if you can be mindful during those breaks, do something that helps you renew, whether it's going for a walk, doing a breathing exercise, the 4-7-8, meditation, or eat something nourishing during your break, that would be great. That's more than one thing, I know, but sorry, it's very hard.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add on a little bit. I guess this is also coming from a student perspective too. For me, it's finding something that puts me in a good space. So it like, and I guess it's basically exactly kind of what Mary said, but it's kind of switched what it is. But I know during like midterms, taking a break and just doing a little thing that puts me in a good space. The hobby, it's kind of changed throughout. So it became like podcasting at some points. It was video production. It was music production at some point, and just taking like a little bit of time, maybe half an hour or whatever, just in like a really stressful time where I can just calm down, relax, and take some time for myself is kind of something I always I've been a fan of.
Mm-hmm. I would tag on to on the meditation end. There is a practice that I discovered about 11 years ago called Yoga Nidra, and it's wakeful sleep. And I've been practicing that and teaching it now for, let's see, I actually have been teaching it for about 10 years. So I might have discovered it about 15 years ago. Geez, I hate dating myself and throwing numbers around, but it is what it is. Yoga Nidra, wakeful sleep, a 35 minute practice. I pretty much do it every day. It resets my nervous system. So I kind of get jacked up a lot in thought, sensory overload, in taking on things within self, within my nervous system. And when I practice Yoga Nidra, it's just a remarkable way of going into a deep, deep state of relaxation and clearing the inbox. And that is something that I would highly recommend, especially for young people or any people that are task oriented or that are under the gun and that they can't get a lot of sleep. I have found that it can be equivalent to a few hours of a really solid REM sleep. it's quite a remarkable practice. And if anybody has questions about Yoga Nidra, they can always private message me on Instagram, or you can just Google it. It's a pretty popular practice.
All right, do you guys want me to add in too? I feel like everyone did so well. I really love Yoga Nidra too. I'll just say that also. And I find that when I'm tight on time and not sleeping well, a practice, like Holly said, 20, 30 minutes, and I feel like I slept 3-4 hours. So it's really amazing. I also think, again, movement is so important, and it's not done enough. We sit and just study and study and sit and study and stare at a screen, especially the last 15 months with COVID and so much screen time. Take the long walks, get up and do like a 5-10 minute dance off, like just move, make every hour, make some kind of movement part of your practice. It will help you focus better. It will help release things from your nervous system as well. So everyone here spoke about a lot of sort of calming things, meditation, which is very important for the nervous system, but also like getting stress out is equally as important as the calming.
Amazing answers. Thank you, everybody. Okay, I'll just scroll back a little bit in the chat here. It's another question for Aiden. What are some tips for balancing school and athletics?
Oh boy. I'll be real. My first semester of school, I struggled with this real bad. I had I had terrible marks in all my classes. I was like way too far on one end of the spectrum, that being the athletics and not the school. And it came down to like a time management thing for me. I got to a space where I just put everything that I knew that was happening into a calendar. I put when I was eating breakfast. I put when I was going to go to my Zoom classes. I put practices. I put like what time I wanted to go to bed. I put everything in this calendar, and it kind of saw me and gave me opportunities where I saw there were holes, and that was basically free time. And that was free time where I could use it for school. I could use it for the thing we talked about earlier about high stress situations where I could kind of calm down. But it really came down to like good time management, which I used to be terrible at. Even now, I'm still not the greatest at it. But I would say if you haven't put everything you got in a calendar, it makes life so much easier, especially when you're super, super busy with. I mean, sometimes it's not even athletics. Like I know other people here working summer jobs, maybe taking spring classes, and even when school starts, you might be still working and stuff like that. So it's just really all kind of about that time management kind of aspect.
Awesome. Our next question also plays on time management. It's for Mary. Should one plan to work all day if they want to accomplish goals, or stop at a specific time to promote time management?
That's a really good question. Part of it is really knowing yourself too. When do you work best? Do you get a lot more done too if you work in the morning, or do you find, the afternoons are better? Just what works best for you. So that's part of the answer. And also the type of work you're doing. So if you're just doing, pretty easy, straightforward stuff, then you could probably work all day, but not work non-stop all day. The research will show that, you'll be most productive and most effective if you're taking a break at the minimum every 90 minutes or to 2 hours. And if someone's feeling quite overwhelmed right now, or even feeling fatigue, I know a lot of people that I work with are feeling, lots of fatigue as well. They're often taking a very short break every hour too, to do something, whether it's doing something fun or just doing something relaxing, depending on what they require. So definitely regular breaks in whatever you choose, and thinking ahead, in terms of scheduling it at times that work best for you. I tend to want to do, if I'm working on like my book or something like that requires some pretty heavy thinking, I find, not necessarily first thing in the morning, because I personally don't feel like I'm awake enough yet in my mind, but definitely mid-morning on to mid-afternoon works well for me, but I couldn't be as effective. Sometimes, of course, you have to, but in the evening. But that's just my own personal experience with that. But definitely, not non-stop. We talk about getting in flow, and that's awesome when you're sort of in the groove, and some people find it hard to stop when they're in the groove, me included. But get the timers on so that you do have a break, so you don't fatigue yourself in the process. Okay, that's great.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, there was one for Dr. Jody there. Importance of vitamin K. What your thoughts were on that?
Good question. Vitamin K is a really, really important nutrient. It's not so talked about. It's not as common as, C or D or B that people know about. It's extremely, extremely important for bone health specifically, and especially for women as they age and get older, or anybody like even like Aiden, who clearly puts a lot of stress on his body, right? Any athlete would. There's a lot of stress in the body and the bones. There's a lot of supplements for that, but vitamin K is really, really important for building and keeping bone strength really resilient.
If I could actually jump in a quick question there, what would like some foods that would be pretty strong in like vitamin K, just for maybe for my sake here too?
So foods. So vitamin K is found in a lot of like protein meats and like bone broth. It's actually not common in a lot of foods. It's a hard like food source to find. It is something that people have to supplement.
Okay.
On that note though, something else that's extremely important for athletes for muscle recovery is magnesium. I don't know if you currently supplement with that, Aiden, or anyone else, but magnesium is really, really, really good, and you can take it, and it actually has the double added benefit of being incredible for your sleep. So it's calming for your nervous system, incredible for your sleep, and it helps replenish your muscles. It's incredible. And I would supplement with that, because that's something that, like, especially for you who's working out all day, working your body all day long, and for anyone else in that position, B12, magnesium, vitamin D, vitamin K, all those things can really enhance your performance as well. Like food, yes, but when you're working out that much, supplements can be really beneficial as well to give your body back what it's losing.
How often do you recommend one takes like magnesium? Because like I feel like we get it in our foods and we don't really notice how much, and we don't want to go over.
Yeah. So again, someone who's an athlete, I would say no matter how, like they couldn't eat enough to be able to replenish how much they're using their body and how much magnesium is being lost by that. Stress also causes us to lose magnesium, high cortisol levels. So the way you know if you need magnesium really is by symptoms. So if you have poor sleep, if you have muscle spasms or aches, if you're anxious at night, and those would be reasons to say, okay, maybe I'm going to try to supplement magnesium and see if it can help benefit. Some people take magnesium all the time. There's no there's no negative effect to it. You can't really take too much of it. The only side effect would sometimes be loose stools if you take too much, but that's really it. That's actually the best way to know if you've taken too much magnesium, is you'll have loose stools, and then you can just back the dose by 50 or 100 milligrams. So I see the question there. How much magnesium is optimal for recovery on a daily basis? So the typical dose of magnesium is between 200 and 600 milligrams. I would always start at 200 and then up it from there. And you'll know you've taken too much if you have loose stools, and then you can always go back. Some people can take up to 1,000 milligrams, but that's a high dose. I would start it at an average dose of 200.
Can I just add something with respect to vitamins? I think it's really important to talk to a nutritionist or to talk to the pharmacist to do some research on your vitamins, because I know that there's a lot of vitamins out there that you're just wasting your money on. And I feel sorry sometimes when I'm in the supermarket and I see some people and they have their little basket of vitamins, and And I've looked at charts that show absorption rate, and some of them are just, you're just really, you're kind of flushing your money down the toilet. So it's really important to talk to a nutritionist. It's really important to talk to a pharmacist, or just do your research to make sure that you understand what it is that you're buying, and how it's going to be processed through your body.
Hi, I have a question for Holly and Aiden, and the question is, what kind of work do you do to gain confidence in basketball and yoga, respectively?
That's a great question. That's a really good
Yeah, it
question.
is. You go, Aiden.
Let me go first. Where do I get my confidence? I think the biggest thing I could say to that is you got to believe in the work you've put in. From like, you're not just like, I was not just born at basketball. I just didn't wake. I was born one day and all of a sudden I was amazing at basketball. Like I've put a lot of work in to be good. So I think the confidence has to come from you believing, and you believing in yourself that you've put in the work to get to where you are. Like for me, it's been however many years of a journey, and I trust in all that work that I've done. And then also, I don't know, for me, it's just like confidence kind of comes, I don't want to sound like rational, but it kind of comes easy. Like why would I ever doubt myself? Like there never really crosses my mind. Like in my mind, I'm always the best, something kind of like that. But it's trusting in yourself and all the work that you've put in, I would say for me.
Mm-hmm. That was really good, Aiden. It's so nice to have this drive, right? Like to know that you're in the right place, and to not give up, to just like dig deep and feel that adrenaline flow, and then you flow, and that's just a lovely feeling. In yoga is such a broad word. Really, this union between body and mind. Confidence is something that I believe we all have. Aiden has a lot of it because he's really good at a particular, he's worked really hard to be good at it. We all have it. We just need to grow it. We need to grow it in various ways. So I would say the practice of yoga allows you, sorry, my battery's gonna die, so I have to tip everybody upside down. The practice of yoga is something that allows you to develop or to uncover your confidence from the inside out. You go to a class, you do one online, you do one in a large group, and it starts to come. Sorry, I have to plug you in, so I'm way down here. And it's a remarkable journey when you begin to move with breath, regardless of the type of practice you're doing, and come back to it. And you keep practicing, just like anything, just like Aiden playing basketball. But it's kind of a natural process, and we are all able to tap in to that confidence, that spirit, that light. It takes some dedication. We call it in the niyamas, tapas, effort.
I can see there's a question in there. If you want me to just, before it ends, add my contribution to it. Just if you don't have it, or if you're feeling negative all the time, first know that that's quite normal. We've been created to have like a pessimistic thinking style, so that we naturally look for risks and dangers as human beings, right? So your brain will do that, look for those negative patterns first. So just to know that that's okay, but you can cultivate it. I agree with Holly, it's within you. You can grow it. One way to grow it would be a gratitude practice. So maybe at the end of the day, before you go to sleep, write down 3 good things that happened today. And just something as simple as that over a few weeks, we know that that's science-based. There's evidence that it can really grow what you focus on, how you see yourself, how you see your environment, your surroundings, your inner confidence too. So give that a try.
Thank you, Mary. I know that we're at 8 o'clock, but I felt like it flew by with you guys' expertise. So we're gonna end it off with one last question, which is, if someone ran into you in a coffee store and had 1 minute with you, and asked you, I'm not in a good place in my life, I don't really know where to start or what to do. Given your backgrounds and your expertise, what would you say to them? Let's start off with Mary, and then you can pass it on to the next panelist.
What would I think, how would I approach that would be first to really understand it, so what is actually going on right now? So if you're doing that with a friend or as well, really listen and listen with some empathy there, but then to understand, how do you want your life to be different? So I know for me, why I focus on my mission on peace and clarity is because I was someone who didn't have a lot of that. I was one who was very anxious. I suffered depression in the past twice. And so, it's, clarifying what you want your journey to be. What do you want to work on? And it's an ongoing journey. It's not as if I'm there and I'm done now. And so I would help them to connect with them, and then help them to understand, how do they want their life to be different? What would that look like if they were living a life, whether it's, full of ease or, more peace, more joy? What would that look like?
Feel free to pass it on to the next panelist.
I would always, I would recommend, firstly, for them to go see a good psychologist, because I'm certainly not that. I'm a facilitator of movement, and I have tools in my toolbox that can help you slow things down and find peace. But I certainly don't profess that, I could diagnose, or I would definitely recommend that they go first to a good psychologist and then come back to me for some movements, for some breath, for some meditative ideas. And that's where I would be at for that.
Can you guys just repeat the question one more time? If we had a minute.
Yeah, so if someone ran into you in like a coffee store and had a minute with you to ask you, like, I'm just not in the place that I want to be in my life right now, and I could just use some guidance, what would you say to them?
Okay, great question. Just wanted to make sure I had it right. Okay, so the first thing that I would say to them is that I'm so sorry for the fact that they're in a bad place. Like Mary was saying, connect with empathy. And then I would also, if I only had a minute, really try to explain to them that there is a way out. There is always hope. The brain is neuroplastic, meaning it's an organ that can change at any time. And that for me personally, what I've seen for myself and what I practice with all of my patients is that self-compassion, your relationship with yourself, is pertinent and foundational for your growth. And most people that are in a bad place are in a pretty negative, usually, relationship with self. And if they can just start there, if they can just start giving themselves and relating to themselves the way they would someone they love, all of how they feel, that's the first, I believe, like one of the first steps towards even getting the support they're going to need to change. Because if you don't love yourself, you're not going to get the support. You're going to just keep self-sabotaging. But if you can start being gentle and loving yourself and looking at your insides and your pain the way, and guiding yourself the way you would someone you love, then you'll be able to take the first step. And self-compassion and all these things, they're a practice. Knowledge, I'm sure Mary, just hearing her speak, I can tell we speak the same juice, all this stuff takes time, guys. You can't just read the book and then expect to change. We really gotta, these things are practices. Our brains aren't wired for self-compassion. Our brains are actually wired for shame and judgment and criticism, especially when we're in a bad place. So self-compassion, start there. That's what I would say. It'll change everything.
Yeah, I mean, if first on, doesn't have to be a coffee shop. You guys see me on campus, feel free to say hi. I'll do my best to say hi back, all that kind of stuff. But I would tell you that you and me, we're the exact same. There's no difference. Anything you want to do, if you put your mind to it, you can do it, right? Now, obviously, I would feel bad that you're in a bad situation, but the only person that's stopping you from doing something is yourself, right? It's that hump that you gotta get over. It could have been like some traumatizing in the past. Everyone's got something where they're a little nervous, they're a little afraid, and they kind of got to get over that. Even for me, there's things that I deal with that I'm not totally comfortable with doing, and I can't get over that hump yet. But I would tell if someone quickly stopped me in a coffee store and was like, hey, like, I'm not doing good, I would sit them and say, like, you and me, we're no different. You just got to you really got to put your mind to, and think about what you really want with what you're trying to go for, right? Like, what's the end goal? Is it you just want to be happy? Is it you're trying to attain something, right? It's kind of, you got to put your mind to it kind of thing. It's just getting over that hump.